Romantic setup with a bitter twist. I came back from a business trip, and my man greeted me like it was straight out of a romance novel. Jazz playing, a bubble bath ready, candles glowing. He told me to relax while he made dinner. I was in bliss, until I looked up and saw my makeup bag on the shelf. The same one I had stuffed into the fridge before I left. I threw on a robe and ran out. He claimed a friend and his girlfriend had stayed over, and she must have taken it out. I asked, "How many times did they stay here over the past 2 weeks?" He said just once. That's when I knew he was lying, because that girl didn't use a brush on my makeup. She dug in with her fingers. Half my foundation was gone, and my new lipstick was worn down to a stub. The slip up at the party. I found out about my boyfriend's cheating 2 months after it happened. He threw a party, and while I was chatting with a friend in the bathroom, she casually asked, "So, are you guys okay after that Rima thing?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I got her to spill everything, then went back to the party like nothing happened. Later that night, while we were in bed, I leaned over and whispered, "Rima?" He jumped up like he'd been electrocuted, said, "I don't want to talk about that," and left the room. The hair on the loofah. I took my child and went to my parents' village for a few days. When we came back, things were off. My slippers were in the wrong place. The vase had water in it, but no flowers. Clearly someone had taken a bouquet and forgot to dump the water. And then the kicker, a short black hair on my pink loofah. I have long, dark blonde hair. That one stood out like a sore thumb. Mistaken identity at the hospital. My girlfriend asked me to stop by her work. She worked at a hospital, so I had to check in at reception. I told the nurse I was her boyfriend. She immediately said, "Oh, you must be Vanya." But I'm not Ivan. Turns out Ivan was the guy my girlfriend had really been seeing. We broke up, and a month later, they got married. Fake pregnancy trap. I dumped my girlfriend after I found out she kissed another guy. She was devastated, calling me, crying, even showing up at my parents' place. Then she said she was pregnant, and sent a photo of a positive test. I was shocked but told her I wouldn't let her go through it alone. Good thing my friend was smarter than me. He called and said, "Dima, you idiot. I found that same photo on Google." Wonder what her next move would have been. Faked a miscarriage. Alone on New Year's Eve. On December 30, my boyfriend admitted he had been cheating during work trips. He said he wasn't going to pay for our apartment anymore. He was moving in with the other woman. Our lease ended on New Year's Eve. So I was left alone for the holidays. I cried, screamed, then grabbed my bags and went to my parents. I'll always be grateful they didn't ask a thing when I showed up on their doorstep. They just tried to give me a good New Year's. Accidental confession by a child. I was a kid when I accidentally exposed my dad. He'd take me sledding, get bored, then meet a random woman with a child, and we'd all end up in a barbecue place. I loved it. Once in front of the whole family I asked, "Are we going to see Aunt Galia and Alia after the restaurant?" Boom, huge fight. Turns out Aunt Galia was no aunt, just one of Dad's flings. Cheating isn't that bad. Early in our relationship, my boyfriend used to joke, "Cheating isn't the worst thing in a relationship." 3 years later, I found out he had a side chick, who didn't even know I existed. I met her, told her everything, and we laughed about it. We dumped him together, nothing too scary after all. Shopping for tables, shopping for trouble. Not long after our wedding, my husband and I went to a furniture store with my best friend. I didn't suspect anything, but as we walked around, I saw them acting like a couple, picking out a table I had rejected several times. That's when I knew. A few days later, I caught them in bed together. Jim Casanova. After 18 years of marriage, I checked my husband's phone for the first time. What I found was embarrassing. Dozens of flirty messages with 20-year-old girls from our gym. He'd gotten their numbers at the front desk and tried to hit on them. They all shut him down. What hurt most wasn't the cheating, but the fact that everyone was laughing at him, and by extension at me. Locked in the bathroom, he told me over the phone that he was at church. Then I heard a woman's voice in the background say, "Honey, why are you locked in the bathroom?" And he still denied everything. Caught red-handed. We were dating, and I loved coming home to him. If he got home first, he made dinner. If I did, I cooked. One day I felt really sick, and went home early. thinking he'd be asleep, but he was with another woman. I turned on the light, screaming, swearing. I calmly said, "Get out, I want to sleep." 10 minutes later, he escorted her out and came to apologize. I didn't even want to listen. In the morning, I packed my things and left. Deleted everything. Never looked back. Women's Day revelation. On March 8, my husband confessed he had fallen in love with someone else, but didn't want to leave me and our child. He said, "I love both of you." He even called the other woman and wanted us to have a sit down. I told him, "What are you waiting for? I've put up with your cheating for 8 years. People don't change. Just go." Happy Women's Day to me. Caught on TV. We were watching TV with the whole family. My uncle and his wife were there too. Suddenly, the screen shows a close-up of my uncle hugging some woman and giving her flowers. My aunt went ballistic. Broke dishes left and right, but they never actually divorced. The forgotten slipper clue. Every day, I'd come home from work happy to see my boyfriend. He always made my favorite dishes, and I'd make his. But one day, I wasn't feeling well, and went home early. I expected to find him napping, but he was with someone else. I turned on the light. They screamed. I just said, "Get out, I want to sleep." Later, he came back to apologize, but I was already emotionally gone. The next morning, I packed up and left. Deleted everything. Never looked back.
I slept with my husband's best friend while he was next door. By the time I turned 30, I was what people like to call a divorced woman with baggage. There weren't many decent men around, and I didn't want to be alone. One evening, in the stairwell of my apartment building, I ran into a slightly drunk man I'd never seen before. He started complimenting me, cracking jokes. Turned out, he was a guest of one of my upstairs neighbors. They were celebrating a birthday. We exchanged numbers. After that, he began visiting his friend more often, mostly to run into me. Eventually, one night, instead of sleeping at his friend's place, he stayed over at mine. It's hard to explain, but within 2 months he moved in. He started calling me his wife, bought gifts for my daughter. We created the illusion of a real family, joint photos, family dinners, visits from friends. His friend, the one who lived 2 floors up, became a regular part of our weekend. Sometimes he came down for beer. Other times we'd go upstairs to him. He got too close to our little family, and it didn't end well. I still regret meeting my husband's friend before I met him. More than once, I slept with that man, my husband's best friend, while my husband was just 1 floor away. The first time it happened was when I stopped by to grab a phone my partner had forgotten. One thing led to another. At first, his friend kept the secret, but eventually, he came clean. My husband moved back in with his mother. I thought maybe something real could come out of it, that maybe there could be a future between me and the neighbor. But it didn't happen. He said things like, "If only we'd met under different circumstances." As far as I know, the 2 men are still friends. I cheated and lived with the guilt for years. We had a typical student marriage, met in college, got married 6 months later, and I got pregnant just a month and a half after the wedding. From there, it was the standard script. He worked. I stayed home with the baby. But I had just finished university and never even had a chance to start my career. I was exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally. Meanwhile, my friends were chasing dream jobs, cool projects, and independence. They didn't understand my new reality as a mother. We had no grandparents nearby, and I had no friends in the new city we moved to. My husband was constantly away, working weekends, going on business trips. I was completely burned out. We fought all the time. Then it got worse. He started coming home drunk. I was furious. I felt useless. One night, when he stumbled home at dawn, I decided I'd had enough. I wanted revenge. I started talking to a guy in a messaging app. It got sexual pretty fast. We set a day to meet. I hired a babysitter, a rare luxury for me back then, and spent nearly an entire month's side income just to make it happen. I went to his place, and yes, we had sex that night. It was completely underwhelming, no passion, no connection, no real satisfaction. Worse, he didn't even pretend to care. He knew how complicated my situation was, and he didn't offer to take me home, or even spend a few minutes with me afterward. I left alone, crying, heading back to my baby. If I got revenge on anyone that night, it was only myself. My husband never found out. We eventually divorced. But what I did only added more emotional weight to everything I was already carrying. It took me 5 years to truly forgive myself.
My name is Emily. I'm 35 years old. I was married for almost 11 years. My husband, Mark, was reliable, kind, thoughtful. He was always the one. Caring, loyal, a little quiet, but honest to the bone. And I'm the one who betrayed him. Not by accident, not drunk on a work trip. I cheated fully aware of what I was doing. And this isn't a story with a clean or easy ending. I want to tell my truth. Not to justify myself, there is no excuse. But maybe someone will hear this and understand how slowly and painfully families fall apart, not from huge fights, but from small, daily indifferences. Mark and I met when I was 23. I had just graduated college, started working at a marketing agency, dreaming of promotions. He was 5 years older, already working as an architect. Calm, focused, not very talkative, but he listened. Really listened. And that pulled me in. We got married a year later. Everything was stable. Not exciting, but solid. I moved up at work. He opened his own design studio. We bought a condo, adopted a cat, talked about kids, but there was always something in the way. Work, stress, bills. Then came the emptiness. We lived like business partners. He was always on time, paid the bills, asked how my day was, but no soul, no passion, no hunger in his eyes. I tried to talk, at first gently, then more directly. He nodded, agreed, said he'd think about it. Nothing changed. Our sex life shrank to once a month. When he touched me, it felt like routine. I felt invisible, unwanted. Then I met Chris. At a conference in Seattle, a colleague from another firm. Smart, charismatic, with that confident grin. He joked, made eye contact, brushed my shoulder when he spoke. He made me feel alive, wanted. I couldn't remember the last time I felt that way. At first, it was innocent. Flirting. Nothing more. But a few weeks later, we were texting every night. And a month after that, I went to his place. Not for coffee, not to talk. I knew exactly what I was doing. Waking up beside him, my first thought was, what have I done? My second, why don't I feel guilty? It didn't stop. At first, once a month, then more often. I lied to Mark, said I had late meetings, girls' nights, work trips, but I was with Chris, laughing, unfiltered, feeling something again. Mark didn't notice, or he pretended not to. He was the same, reliable, quiet, looking through me, never asking what had changed. One day, Chris asked me, "Are you going to leave your husband?" I didn't answer. I didn't know. I didn't want to leave Mark, but I couldn't keep living this lie either. Then it happened. Mark found out. I came home late. He was sitting in the kitchen. On the table, my old phone. I hadn't used it in months, but it still had photos, messages. One night, Chris and I took a few pictures together. Just for fun. I never deleted them. Mark had found them. He didn't yell, didn't cry, just sat there. Finally, he asked, "How long?" I couldn't lie. "About 6 months," I whispered. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Not angry, not even heartbroken, just gone. Like the woman he married had vanished, and someone else sat in her place. He got up and left. The next day, when I came home, his things were gone. 2 days later, he texted me, "I don't want to see you. I'll sign the divorce papers. Don't contact me." That was it. My life shattered. Chris? He ghosted me a week later. Said, I wasn't looking for drama. Of course not. He never promised anything. And I was alone. No Mark, no affair, no love, no family. It's been 2 years. Mark never forgave me. We haven't spoken. He moved to another state, I heard, through mutual friends. Opened a new studio. Is he happy? I don't know. I just hope he is. I think about it often. Could I have saved our marriage? Maybe if I had spoken louder. Maybe if he had listened. Or maybe we were two people who got too comfortable, who forgot how to see each other. I won't defend myself. I cheated, and I paid for it in full. If you're listening and thinking you can live a double life, you can't. The truth always comes out. And when it does, it doesn't just destroy the person you betrayed. It breaks you, too. Because betrayal isn't one-sided. It burns everyone it touches.
I used to think I had it all. A plasterocido, we had a and a bright, curious daughter. On paper, it looked perfect. Instagram perfect. But if you stared long enough, you could see the cracks, hairline fractures running through the foundation of my life. Ryan and I had been married for 12 years. We met in college at UCLA. He was the charming finance major with a disarming smile, and I was the journalism student who thought she could change the world. We fell hard, got married right after graduation, and soon enough we had Emily. For a while, everything felt right. Busy, exhausting, but right. But things change. People change. Ryan began working longer hours. He built his tech startup from scratch, and I admired that. But somewhere along the line, I stopped being his partner and became part of the decor, another piece of the curated life he presented to investors and clients. Conversations turned into logistics, sex turned into obligation, and the silences, those were the worst. It started simply enough. A glance across a conference room, a compliment that lingered. His name was Alex Carter. He was a marketing consultant at a PR event I covered for a magazine gig. He was tall, confident, and effortlessly charming, the kind of man who looked at you like you were the only person in the room. I hadn't felt that in years. At first, it was coffee, then lunch, then drinks. And then, well, you can guess the rest. We met in hotel rooms in Santa Monica, and sometimes at his condo downtown. I crafted excuses like a novelist, interviews, deadlines, editor emergencies. I kept separate calendars, separate outfits, even a separate burner phone, hidden in the lining of my gym bag. I was meticulous, obsessive, and completely addicted. The adrenaline was intoxicating. I'd sit across from Ryan at dinner, nodding and smiling, while texting Alex under the table. Sometimes I'd look at Emily, wonder what kind of example I was setting, but then Alex would send a photo, a message, a memory, and I'd fall again. But like all highs, it started to fade. Alex grew restless. He didn't like being second. He wanted more. He said he loved me, and that terrified me. I pulled back, started ghosting him, and threw myself into being wife of the year. Then came Ethan. Ethan Hayes was different. He was a colleague of Ryan's, widowed, soft-spoken, and kind in a way that made your heart ache. We ran into each other at a corporate retreat in Palm Springs. He'd lost his wife to cancer the year before, and was raising a teenage son alone. We talked for hours that night, about life, grief, marriage. It wasn't lust. It was something deeper, something I hadn't felt in so long, I forgot it existed. We didn't kiss that night, or the next, but when we did, it felt like forgiveness. Ethan and I never met in hotels. It was always walks, picnics, quiet afternoons in borrowed beach houses. He never asked me to leave Ryan, he just listened, and made me feel like I still had a soul. But by then, my lies were stacked so high I couldn't see the sky. Ryan started noticing things. A missed school recital. A receipt left in a coat pocket. A perfume he didn't recognize. I got better at lying, blamed the babysitter, the dry cleaner, a headache. But he wasn't a fool. He started asking questions. One night, I woke up and found him sitting in the living room. It was 2 a.m., he was staring at his laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Just work," he said too quickly. He closed the screen, but something in his eyes lingered. Doubt, anger, and worse, hurt. I started checking behind myself constantly, clearing browser histories, double-checking call logs. I began to wonder if he was following me. Once, when I left Ethan's beach place in Malibu, I saw a black SUV behind me. It could have been coincidence, but it stayed with me until I got onto the 405. Then came the emails. At first, they were spam. Then one came from an anonymous account, a photo of me outside Ethan's house. Blurry, distant, but unmistakably me. My chest tightened. I deleted the email, then emptied the trash. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Ethan. And still, I kept going. I couldn't stop. The secrecy, the escape. It had become part of me. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I held up one of Ryan's shirts and found a business card tucked into the front pocket. On the back, L.A. Investigative Services. My blood ran cold. He had hired someone. He knew. That night, I couldn't eat. Every sound made me jump. I imagined confrontations, yelling, divorce papers thrown across the table, but none of it came. Ryan was quiet, almost too quiet. I began second-guessing every move. Was he setting a trap? Waiting for me to confess? Was he documenting everything? For custody, I started writing long entries in a journal I kept locked in a safe, pouring out my fear, my guilt, my confusion. I wrote letters to Emily that I never planned to give her, trying to explain myself, trying to rewrite the story before it ended. The guilt was eating me alive, but not enough to stop. Not yet. Emily started asking strange questions. Why is Daddy sad? Why do you wear makeup just to go to the store? Children always know. Then came the letter. I found it in my nightstand. Folded. No envelope. Just Ryan's handwriting. Claire. I know. Not everything. But enough. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. But lies leave trails. And I followed them. I won't confront you. I won't scream. But I can't do this anymore. I'm moving out next week. You can keep the house. Emily deserves stability. I hope one day you'll tell her the truth. Take care of yourself. Ryan. He left the next morning. No fight. No drama. Just silence. Ethan offered to be there for me. He said we could start over. But the truth is, I didn't know who I was anymore. I told him I needed time. I never heard from him again. Now the house feels too big. Emily is with her grandparents for the summer. The silence is deafening. Sometimes I walk room to room, touching things, wondering how I let it all slip through my fingers. I told myself I cheated because I was lonely, neglected, unseen. But maybe I cheated because I was afraid. Afraid of stillness. Of looking too closely at myself. I learned how to juggle lies with elegance. But I forgot how to love. And in the end, that's what cost me everything.
Life used to feel like a calm melody I was used to hearing every day. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for many years. The home we built with our own hands was filled with warmth, her gentle laughter in the evenings, the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings, little habits and shared routines. Everything seemed unshakable. But one day, the silence started sounding different. I noticed Sarah was talking less, avoiding my gaze. Late night calls and sudden meetings became the new normal. I told myself it was just fatigue, work, stress, or life getting in the way. But deep down, my heart whispered that something was wrong. The tension inside me grew, and every day it felt like the house was filling with emptiness. I was afraid to ask, afraid of the truth. But silence spoke louder than words. Each evening brought new doubts. She stayed late at work more often, her phone was constantly unreachable, and when I called, she answered coldly and briefly. I tried to catch her eyes but saw only distance. The nights became tormenting. I couldn't sleep, listening to the creaking floorboards, waiting for her to come home, hoping for explanations. But there were none. Just endless silence and the heavy feeling of betrayal. Memories clung to little things. Her smiles grew rare, our conversations more superficial. I searched for reasons within myself, my mistakes, but the truth could not be hidden. One day, I saw messages, innocent words that meant betrayal to me. My heart clenched, breath caught. It was a blow cold, painful, crushing. At that moment, my world collapsed. Memories of happy days gave way to a shadow of suspicion. I couldn't believe she could do this, but the evidence was clear. I fought within myself. Believe or reject. Accept or fight. Every moment was a test. He appeared suddenly, like a shadow haunting our days. A man who became part of our lives, placing invisible barriers between us. He demanded Sarah leave me, promising her freedom and a new life. But she hesitated, afraid to destroy what we had built over the years. Her indecision only deepened my pain. I saw how she struggled inside, and I felt us both losing control. Then came the day he stopped hiding. The lover came to my home personally. His confidence was like a cold knife. He offered me a choice. Either let my wife go quietly or reveal secrets that could destroy our lives. In his hands was an envelope full of proof. My heart tightened, my mind fought emotions. I realized I stood on the edge of an abyss. He revealed what had been hidden secrets from the past that could disgrace me and ruin everything I had built. Photos, messages, documents, it was all there. I understood the cost of this battle was far greater than mere infidelity. It was a test of strength, honesty, and endurance. The fight inside me grew sharper. I tried to save the family but saw it cracking. Sarah and I talked, remained silent, cried. She feared making a choice. I feared losing her forever. Every day was a new challenge. Every conversation, a step into the unknown. In the end, I made a choice not for her, but for myself. I gave her time to understand what she wanted. The decision was hard, but necessary. It was a moment of freedom and pain at the same time. Slowly, we began to heal not as before, but differently. Learning to forgive, learning to trust. I learned to let go and live on. Years later, I realized the true strength lies in keeping yourself intact, no matter what. Emily and Jason had been living together in Brooklyn for 9 years. He worked as a mechanic, and she was an accountant at a construction firm in Manhattan. Their marriage had long turned into a routine. Muted dinners, television in the background, arguments about groceries, and long silences filled with fatigue. It wasn't a bad relationship, but it hadn't been a fulfilling one for a long time. Whatever love there once was had slowly eroded into cohabitation. One evening, after a particularly draining day, Emily stopped by the corner store to grab a carton of milk. At the checkout, her eyes caught a bright Powerball poster. Jackpot, $347 million. On impulse, and perhaps out of boredom, she bought a ticket, just to feel something. A few days later, while Jason sat on the couch shouting at a baseball game, Emily checked the numbers on her phone. Every single number matched. She had just won $347 million. The realization didn't hit her immediately. She locked herself in the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and cried not out of joy, but from a deep, overwhelming clarity. She wasn't just rich. She was free to leave, to start over, to disappear quietly without another exhausting conversation, without begging to be heard. She didn't tell Jason. She hired a lawyer, kept everything discreet. According to New York law, the lottery ticket was her personal property. It was purchased before the divorce, and the winnings were claimed in her name alone. Within a month, she filed for divorce. No drama, no accusations, just detachment. Jason was confused. He didn't understand what had happened, why she was suddenly done, but Emily no longer owed explanations. She had already explained herself in 1,000 ways over the year, she just hadn't been listening. After the divorce, she moved downtown and then quietly left the city. She took the lump sum payout just over $210 million after taxes and disappeared from his world. Months later, Jason saw her on the cover of a national magazine. Brooklyn Powerball winner turns jackpot into life-changing women's foundation. He barely recognized her. The woman in the photo was radiant, confident, sharp. She looked nothing like the person who used to sit across from him at dinner, picking at a salad in silence. For the first time, he understood what he'd lost. Not the money, her. At first he was bitter. Then came the emptiness. Eventually, he found the strength to write her a letter, not to ask for forgiveness, not to win her back, but to finally say the things he'd never said. Regret, gratitude, awareness. It wasn't much, but it was honest. To his surprise, she responded with a time and place for coffee. They met in a quiet cafe in Chelsea. She was poised, composed, a different version of the woman he used to know. They talked calmly, like old acquaintances. Jason said what he came to say. Emily listened. There was no anger in her, no coldness, just distance. The space between them had grown too wide to cross. That meeting marked the true end of their story. Years passed. Jason eventually opened a small vintage car restoration shop in Queens. He worked hard, stayed sober, found a quiet rhythm to life. He never fully stopped thinking about Emily, but he stopped living in regret. Over time, he understood. Sometimes, losing everything is how you find yourself. Emily, on the other hand, had built a new life overseas. She settled in Barcelona, pulled back from public life, and spent her days writing, traveling, and teaching financial literacy workshops for women. She lived simply, but deeply. She had learned to be alone without being lonely. Then, one warm spring morning, as she sipped espresso at a corner cafe in the Example district, she spotted a familiar silhouette across the street. A man was studying a line of parked vintage cars. His hair was a little grayer, but the way he stood, the way he looked at the world hadn't changed. It was Jason. He was in town for a classic car expo. They locked eyes. A moment passed. Then he smiled, and she smiled back. They shared a quiet coffee. The conversation flowed gently. No questions about the past, no talk of what could have been. Just two people with shared history and separate futures, sitting in the soft Spanish light, grateful if only for the clarity time had brought. They didn't exchange numbers. There were no promises to keep in touch. But as they parted ways, both felt something close to peace.
Maternity leave. A global pandemic. A husband working remotely from home. My world had become a loop of diapers, dishes, and dead silence. I felt stuck, dull, invisible. So when I got the message about a high school reunion, something inside me stirred, maybe for the first time in months. "You're getting ready like a lover's waiting around the corner," my husband joked that day. He had no idea how close he was to the truth. Before I became a mother, I was just a girl who used to fix her hair differently every morning, hoping to impress the boy who sat behind her in class. He once whispered, "That one's the prettiest hairstyle. Keep it like that." We never dated. We never even really talked after graduation, despite having plenty of chances. At the reunion, half our class showed up. He and I sat far apart, but our eyes met once, and I swear my whole body shivered. From that second, I knew something was going to happen, and it did. Our only option to meet was in hourly hotels. The first time I stepped into one, I was ashamed, but also full of adrenaline. He had a wife and 2 kids. I had a husband and an 11-month-old baby. I had to invent stories, lie to my family, sneak around like a teenager. As a woman stuck in maternity leave, pulling this off felt like running a covert operation. The affair lasted for a few months. During that time, I lost more than 10 kilos. I looked at myself in the mirror and finally liked what I saw. My husband even started complimenting me, told me motherhood made me glow. How didn't he see it? Maybe my lies were too bold for him to imagine I was capable of betrayal. It wasn't me who ended it. He did. His wife grew suspicious, and he decided to stop just like that. I was shocked, even hurt. Later, he called me again to meet. But by then, something in me had cooled off. I didn't want it anymore. Do I regret it? Yes, because cheating is wrong, and I can admit that. But part of me also believes I needed that break from the cage I was in. It helped me lose the weight, and it made me see my husband with fresh eyes.
A 43-year-old husband and father discovered his wife's infidelity through messages she exchanged on social media. It turned out she had started an affair with one of her friends. "He's an ugly bastard, but he's got one thing: money," the man said. After finding out about the cheating, he called his daughter and urged her to come home immediately. When she arrived, she seemed nervous, which struck him as odd. He then asked his wife to join the conversation, and that's when the truth came out. His daughter had known about the affair all along. The wife didn't deny anything. She admitted that she'd been seeing the other man for over a year. According to her, their daughter had been paid a large sum of money to keep quiet, which is why she never told her father. Apologies weren't enough. "The two of them completely destroyed me," the man confessed. "I walked out of the house, waited until it got dark, ignored all my daughter's calls, and came back to grab my things. I thought my wife would still be home, but she was gone, probably with her lover again. I blocked both my wife and daughter as soon as I checked into a hotel. I want nothing to do with either of them."
Jessica, 21-year-old, faced a tough situation when her fiancé broke up with her due to infidelity. After a wild night, she confessed in a moment of sincerity and regret that, just before, she had slept with her boss at work. "I had been dating an amazing guy for a long time. We started as great friends, and then, gradually, we developed a serious relationship that was heading toward marriage," Jessica shares. "He's an IT guy, wanted a family, and was kind of overly domesticated. He treated me beautifully, drove me to work, picked me up afterward." At the same time, Jessica considered her ongoing flirtation with her older, married boss nothing more than casual texting. "At first, we just exchanged messages about random things," Jessica says, "and then we started joking about sex, relationships, lovers, and so on. I thought we were just laughing it off. It was just a way to distract ourselves from the boredom at work. Then, suddenly, I had to go out of town with him on a business trip. A thought crossed my mind, but I dismissed it. He didn't seem like the type who would cheat on his wife with a subordinate. It seemed beneath him. But then, out of nowhere, he pulled over, turned to me, and said, 'We've clearly forgotten something. Yes, sex.' For the first few seconds, I was scared. But then, I just let my feelings take over. I liked him. He liked me. Why not? I also convinced myself it would only happen once, and it felt so strange to drive back, pretending nothing happened. We returned to the office, and an hour later, my fiancé picked me up from work. We went for a walk, had dinner, and then we had a very passionate night of love. But what happened the next day, Jessica remembers as a moral and emotional nightmare. I woke up at my fiancé's place, had breakfast, and he drove me to work. Around lunchtime, I realized what I had done. I had slept with 2 men in one day. To distract myself, I decided to calm down and went shopping. My fiancé, sensing something was wrong from my messages, showed up. We walked around the mall. I decided to confess everything. I admitted everything to him. He listened, then told me he had expected something like this, that I wasn't the kind of person with whom serious relationships could be built, and that I had broken his heart. He dropped me off at home, and that was it. We didn't talk anymore. Well, I tried to talk, but he shut me down, saying he had nothing to say to me. Jessica explains that she was in a deep depression for several weeks after that, and still feels she made the wrong choice and got lost in her life and relationships. "The worst part of cheating is the way it burns you from the inside," Jessica says. "Even now, I feel like I might cry. I was shaken for a long time afterward. I couldn't take it, so I confided in my mom. She also said it was dirty and that she would never do something like that. But she always used to criticize me, saying I spread my legs too easily. Maybe she's right? I still sleep with my boss from time to time."
My name is Alex. I'm 38 years old. Just a regular guy. an engineer from southern Russia. Well, I used to live there before everything fell apart. This is a story about betrayal, not the kind that happens in a fleeting moment. Number. This one was calculated, slow, and deliberate, the kind that creeps in while you're busy trusting. I met Katya at university. She was 2 years ahead of me, finishing her degree when I was just starting mine. Sharp, confident, sarcastic in a clever way, like she already knew what everyone was about before they even opened their mouths. I fell hard for her. Fast. We moved in together within a year, got married soon after. We were building a life, both ambitious, both hardworking. A couple of years later, we had our own apartment, a dog, a car, and even started talking about kids. It all seemed like the perfect trajectory. But there was another person in the picture. Gleb, my best friend since childhood. We grew up in the same courtyard, spent nearly every day together as kids. He was wild, funny, magnetic, the type of guy who could charm his way into anything. He was chaos, and I was his anchor. He dropped out of things often: school, jobs, relationships, but always found his way back to me, and I always welcomed him like nothing happened. When I introduced him to Katya, everything felt easy. Too easy, maybe. They hit it off right away. They laughed, made fun of me in that friendly way. She called him unhinged. He called her the Iron Lady. At first, it felt good, like I'd built a bridge between two people I loved. But then I noticed things. Subtle ones. Katya would put on a little extra makeup when Gleb was coming over. She'd laugh harder at his jokes than mine. Sometimes they'd exchange a glance I couldn't quite decode. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I trusted them. I wasn't a jealous guy. Then one night, I woke up and Katya wasn't in bed. I walked out and found her sitting in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone. She hid the screen when she saw me. I asked who she was talking to. She said, "Just Lena." But I'd caught a glimpse of the name. Gleb. That was the turning point. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I started watching, paying attention. Katya started coming home later, said work was insane. Gleb stopped coming over as often, but sent me the usual text and jokes to keep appearances. Then I remembered an old tablet we kept around. I'd connected her Messenger account to it once when mine was broken, and apparently it had stayed synced. And there it was. Messages. Dozens of them. Flirtation. Jokes. Private little codes between them. They'd already slept together more than once. She told him she felt more alive with him, that I had become boring, predictable, and he told her I was a good guy, but too soft. They talked about how it wasn't planned, but felt right. My heart sank, not because I didn't expect it, but because deep down, I already knew. I'd known for weeks, and yet I went to work the next day like everything was normal. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I started documenting. Screenshots, voice messages, notes, every lie they told in text form. I saved it. Not because I wanted revenge. Not at first. I just needed to see it. To prove I wasn't crazy. I became silent, distant. I watched her move around the house like a stranger. I watched them both pretending like nothing was wrong, even though they'd stolen something from me I couldn't describe. I invited them both over for dinner, casually, no warning, just, let's have a drink. Katya showed up nervous. Gleb tried to be his usual loud self. I poured wine, put the tablet on the table, played a voice message. It was Katya's voice. Then Gleb Siberius. Then laughter. Then plans. Maybe someday, if he finds someone else, she said. Maybe we could be together, he replied. They both froze. I said nothing for a long while. Then I looked at them and asked, "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" Neither spoke. I don't want apologies. I don't want your excuses. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. And I walked out. That same night, I left. I didn't scream. I didn't hit him. I didn't ask her to stay. I just packed a bag and disappeared. The next few weeks were hell. I didn't sleep. I drank too much. I cried, yes, cried, like a child. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of who had betrayed me. The two people I loved most in the world. Katya texted, called, at first often, then less, then a long email. She said Gleb had ghosted her, that he didn't want anything serious, that she had made a terrible mistake, that she missed me, that I was the only one who ever really cared about her. I didn't reply. It's been 2 years. I live in another city now. I work in a new company. I sleep through the night. I don't flinch when I hear my phone buzz. I'm learning to trust again. Slowly, carefully. And the craziest thing? I'm not even angry anymore. I'm thankful. Because when you lose everything you thought mattered, sometimes you finally find out who you are. Katya and Gleb destroyed the old version of me, but I built something better. Something real. Something whole. Me. If you'd asked me 2 years ago who I trusted more than anyone, I'd have said, my wife, Emma, no hesitation. We met when I was 23, young, broke, but full of hope. She worked at the front desk of the gym where I used to train. At first, it was just small talk, then coffee, then weekends, then a life. We were married for 8 years. No kids though, we tried. It just didn't happen for us. But that never seemed to bother her, or at least that's what she told me. We had a cozy little house on the edge of town, a dog named Rusty, matching coffee mugs, weekend rituals, pancakes on Sundays, Netflix on Fridays. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours, solid. Or so I thought. I'm not a jealous guy, never have been. Emma always had guy friends, colleagues, gym buddies. I never cared. I trusted her. But over time, I noticed things. Little things. She started guarding her phone. Nothing dramatic, just subtle. She used to leave it face up on the kitchen table. Now it was always screened down. She started working late. Again, nothing crazy. Just a few hours here and there. She'd come home tired, distracted, sometimes smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just being insecure, that marriages go through phases. But one evening, everything shifted. We were at a dinner party, friends of ours. I went to grab her coat from the bedroom and saw her phone charging on the nightstand. It buzzed. I glanced without thinking. Miss you already, can't wait till next week. From someone named D. I stood there, heart pounding, coat in hand, while the walls of my life started to bend inward. I didn't confront her that night. I smiled through the evening, laughed at jokes, said goodbye to friends, all while my mind was spiraling. When we got home, I waited for her to sleep. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. There were dozens of messages, flirty, intimate, photos, inside jokes, weekend plans, booked hotel rooms, private chats during her workouts. His name was Daniel. He worked in the same office, divorced, 2 kids, and apparently no problem with sleeping with another man's wife. I didn't sleep at all that night. Next morning, I went to work like nothing happened. Spent the whole day thinking, what do I do? Talk to her? Leave? Scream? Pretend? That evening, she texted me, hey love, want me to pick up dinner tonight? I replied, sure, whatever you want. Inside, I was done, but I wasn't going to walk away just yet. I needed answers. And maybe I wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain I was living with. So I started watching, quietly, observing, tracking. I synced her iCloud account to my laptop, set up GPS tracking, took screenshots, every message, every plan, every lie. She thought she was clever, careful. She had no idea I had the full script of her second life. I watched them meet at coffee shops. I saw her take selfies for him in outfits I had bought. She used the same words with him that she once used with me. The same emojis, the same miss you already. For 3 weeks, I collected everything. Then, on a Sunday morning, I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh coffee. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead. Afterward, I handed her a folder. Just a plain, manila folder. No words. She opened it. Inside were printouts, photos, messages, maps, hotel confirmations. A summary I had written date by date, location by location. Her face turned white. She didn't cry. Not at first. She looked up at me, silent, then whispered, how long have you known? I said, long enough. She started to talk excuses, apologies, stammering nonsense about feeling lonely, about how she didn't mean to fall for someone else. She said it started as a joke, a game, something harmless. I asked her one thing. When did I stop being enough for you? She couldn't answer that. I packed a bag and left that day, moved in with a friend. Eventually, I got a place of my own. We divorced quietly. No drama, no shouting, just 2 signatures and silence. A month after the papers were signed, she sent me a long email, said she missed me, that Daniel didn't turn out to be who she thought he was, that she'd made a mistake. She asked if I'd ever consider starting over. I didn't reply. Some betrayals aren't just about the act, they're about the choice. The moment someone decides their pleasure is worth more than your pain. I've learned a lot since then. About love, about trust, about what it means to truly see someone and what happens when you stop. Now, I'm okay. I still believe in love, just not the kind you have to question every time they look at their phone. I didn't see it coming. They say the signs are always there, you just don't want to notice them. And maybe that's true, because in my mind, we were fine. Not perfect, but fine. We'd been together for nearly 10 years. Married, with a son. Sasha, 8 years old, full of energy and questions. Our life was routine. Work, school runs, bills, weekends. I worked in logistics, always on the move, spending days, sometimes weeks away from home. But I thought we had an understanding. I worked hard, provided, and whenever I was home, I did everything to be present, to be there for her. For our son, Liza. She used to light up when I came home. There was joy in her eyes, warmth in her voice, and then something changed. Slowly, subtly. The greetings became mechanical, the hugs brief. Her eyes didn't look for mine anymore. At first, I blamed stress, her work, our responsibilities. You know how life can grind down even the best of us. But something deeper had shifted, something I couldn't ignore. She started missing my calls, said she was busy at the gym, with her mom, with friends. And one night, it happened. I didn't mean to look. Her phone was just lying on the kitchen table. The screen lit up. A message. 4 words. I miss you already. I froze. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask. I just walked to the bedroom and stared at the ceiling for hours. There are moments in life when everything you know begins to unravel silently, without warning. The next morning, I told her I had a week-long business trip. That was a lie. I stayed in the city, booked a hotel, and waited. On Friday night, I parked near our apartment. Her car was there, lights on, and around 8:45, he showed up. Tall guy, confident walk, wore a black coat. He punched in the door code like he'd done it a dozen times. She opened the door in a robe, smiling, laughing, flirty. Then she let him in. The door closed. Just like that. I sat in the car, numb. I wanted to scream, to cry, but I didn't. Not yet. I drove off an hour later, parked by a river. And there, alone in the dark, I broke down. I cried like a child. Me, a grown man, husband, father, completely shattered. 2 days later, I came home, acted normal. She never noticed. On Sunday, we took Sasha to the movies, had pizza, smiled. She held my hand in front of our son. Inside, I was hollow. On Monday, I hired a private investigator. I needed the truth, all of it. A week later, I had photos. Her, him, at cafes, in our apartment, in her car, kissing, holding hands, smiling. And worst of all, she had introduced him to our son. Uncle Ilya, she told him. They were at the park where we used to go as a family. I printed the photos, put them in an envelope, left it on her pillow. Then I walked out. She called me 2 hours later, crying, desperate. It's not what you think, she said. I didn't mean for this to happen. She begged me to talk. So we talked. A few days later, she admitted everything. The affair had been going on for nearly 6 months. He was a colleague. It started with coffee, then messages. In her words, it just happened. I asked her one thing. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy? Why didn't you leave me first? She had no answer. We divorced. Sasha stayed with her, but I see him every week. We go to the zoo, watch movies, play games. He still asks when I'm coming back home. I tell him, this is our home now, buddy, just you and me, and that's okay. It's been a year. She's still with Ilya. They seem happy. People say he's a nice guy. Good for them. As for me, I live, I breathe, I laugh again. Slowly, painfully, but I do. Some nights are hard. Some memories still sting. But I don't lie to myself anymore. And I'll never let someone lie to me like that again. Because love, real love, doesn't betray you when your back is turned.
The story of 31-year-old Amelia's infidelity. He was my first love, and at the time, my husband's best friend Amelia says with a heavy heart, recalling events from several years ago. We often gathered in groups, and everyone who saw us said there was an undeniable chemistry between me and him. We laughed it off, joked around, but I could feel it he couldn't look at me without a fire in his eyes. Amelia thought that since her husband was her first in every way, both in bed and in life, their relationship would be forever free of betrayal. She was certain they'd be happy together, but life had other plans. Then one day, he left for a long business trip. We continued hanging out in our usual circle, and at some point he just reached out, and I felt a jolt, like being struck by electricity. Later, when the city was quiet and dark, we drove around, and he'd come to see me at night. It was just supposed to be sex, no real feelings. We continued meeting in secret, becoming lovers until we were caught. The truth came to light almost immediately after the husband returned from his trip. I was the one who messed up. I didn't delete the messages, and when my husband came back, he read everything. In that moment, I thought my heart had stopped. I thought he might kill me right then and there, but somehow we talked it through. He was too good to destroy everything in an instant. He is my best friend, my rock, and even now, after all this time, I can't believe I did that. Amelia didn't understand right away what she had done. She couldn't explain why she made that choice. But as the shame and pain hit her, she realized the gravity of her actions. At that moment, I asked myself, what did I do? I didn't even recognize myself. How could I have gone so low? Where was my pride, my self-worth? I was loved. I had a man who made me part of his life. But I had fallen into this trap of passion that, at first, seemed harmless, but in reality, it was destroying everything. After all this, I understood I can't lower myself like that. Even if you've known someone your entire life, it doesn't give you the right to betray them. I'll never make that mistake again, no matter who tries to teach me otherwise. Now, with time and reflection, Amelia sincerely regrets what happened, but her relationship with her husband only grew stronger. It was a painful lesson, but it taught her that true love has nothing to do with betrayal.
I don't know why I said yes. My heart pounded like a drum. We got in his car and drove to the waterfront. It was nearly deserted. Lights from the city shimmered on the water. A light breeze. The smell of spring. We sat on a bench in silence. Then he gently reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. I wasn't planning this, he said quietly. I didn't mean to fall for you. Not like this. Not you. It's not right. I'm married, Nick, I said, barely above a whisper. I know. His hand remained on mine. Are you happy, Martha? He asked. I couldn't answer. I looked down at the ground instead. That moment, no kiss. No intimacy, no touch beyond the hand, but it was enough. My soul had already crossed a line. A week later, the thing I feared and secretly longed for finally happened. It was late. I stayed behind. For work. Nick did too. We barely spoke. I could feel him behind me, like a thunderstorm just waiting to break. Then, without a word, he walked over, took my face in his hands, and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forceful. It was slow, soft, full Hoff, something that had been buried and denied for too long. It felt impossible and yet inevitable. And I didn't stop him. Everything changed after that. We became careful, secretive. Sometimes it was coffee breaks. Sometimes short work trips. Once a weekend conference where we shared a hotel room. I lived in two realities. In one, dinners with my husband, school drop-offs, laundry. In the other, whispered texts, stolen glances, hotel sheets still warm. I was terrified. I knew it couldn't last. I knew I was losing myself. And yet, I was alive again, breathing for the first time in years. One evening, Andrew came home late. I was in the kitchen when he walked in with a strange look on his face. He glanced at my phone on the table, then at me. Is there something you want to tell me? He asked. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I whispered. You've changed, Martha. Not suddenly, but I see it. A long pause. Is there someone else? I didn't know what to say. Lie? Confess? I chose silence. That was the beginning of the end. Andrew didn't scream. He didn't accuse me of anything. He just quietly went to the bedroom and closed the door. And I sat at the kitchen table the entire night. Phone in hand. I thought of texting Nick. I didn't. A week later, I walked into Nick's office and said it was over. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, that my family mattered more. He didn't fight, he just nodded. And I left. For good. It's been 3 years. Andrew and I are still together. We never talk about what happened. He either forgave me or learned to live with it. Maybe he just didn't want to destroy everything over a single affair. But me? I haven't forgiven myself. I don't even know if I did the right thing. All I know is that it wasn't just an affair. It was a cry for breath, for life. It was about remembering who I was before the dishes and the diapers and the dinners. About remembering that I used to be a woman, not just a wife or a mother. And maybe that's why I still think about that night on the bench by the water. And the man who, for the first time in years, truly saw me. My name is Martha. I'm 38 years old, and I've been married for nearly 15. My husband, Andrew, is a good man, truly. Honest, faithful, calm, reliable, like a stone. And maybe that's the problem. The first years of our marriage were like a dream. We lived in a tiny rental apartment, surviving on instant noodles. But I felt like the happiest woman alive. He brought me flowers, wrote me notes, kissed me on the forehead when I fell asleep. But over time, things changed. Not all at once. It was slow, like people growing old, or how fabric wears down on your favorite chair. He spoke less. The flowers disappeared. The gifts stopped. We didn't talk anymore, we exchanged information. Who's picking up the kids? What to buy at the store? When to pay the electric bill? I wasn't looking for an affair. I swear I wasn't chasing anything. I just needed a break. A breath of air. Something away from the endless, "Mom, where are my socks?" dirty dishes and, "What's for dinner?" every night. So when a friend offered me a part-time position at a law firm, I accepted without thinking twice. That's how I met Nick. He wasn't just my boss. He was different, confident, witty, charming. He had that voice you could listen to for hours calm, deep, just a little rough around the edges. On the first day, he remembered how I liked my coffee, with milk and 1 sugar. Then he started bringing it to me in the mornings. No words, just placed it gently on my desk and smiled. Andrew hadn't brought me coffee in years. Not once. At first, I thought Nick was just being polite. Then I assumed he flirted with everyone. But slowly, I noticed his gaze lingered just a little longer on me. That he remembered every little story I told, even the silly ones. That he looked at me in a way I hadn't been looked at in years. One evening, we stayed late at the office. We were reviewing paperwork when suddenly, the lights cut out. Power outage happened sometimes in the building. We laughed. He turned on his phone's flashlight. And he just looked at me. I looked back. Then he said, "You have really beautiful eyes, Martha. I'm sorry someone forgot to keep telling you that." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My heart pounded in my chest like I was 20 again. That moment, that was the turning point. One tiny, dangerous moment that changed everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words played in my head over and over. "I'm sorry someone forgot to keep telling you that." I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just kindness. Just words. But it didn't feel that way. Over the next few weeks, Nick and I avoided talking about that evening. He was back to being the sharp, collected boss. I tried to focus on work. But something had shifted. I felt his eyes on me when I walked by. And I hated how much I wanted him to look. I started putting on perfume again, ones I hadn't touched in years. A little makeup, even if I was just buried in spreadsheets all day. My life had color again, not joy, exactly, but sparks. Dangerous, electric sparks. I felt like a woman again. Andrew didn't notice. Or he chose not to. One Friday evening, I was packing up to leave when Nick appeared behind me. He looked at me for a moment, then said softly, "Come with me. I want to show you something." "Right now?" I asked. "Yeah, just trust me."
There are those who deliberately cheat, seeking to get back at their partner for constant arguments or simply bad relationships. This is what 27-year-old Isabella did, and now she believes that cheating helped her get her life back on track. I had been dating my boyfriend for a long time. It so happened that I had to go on a business trip to Moscow for work. Not for a couple of days, but for a long time. Because of that, we started arguing a lot, and a week before I left, we had a huge fight. He didn't even see me off at the airport, Isabella recalls. We didn't talk for at least 2 weeks. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, so I wrote to him first. We seemed to make up, but the relationship still had a cold vibe. We kept fighting over silly things and getting hurt by each other. When it was her boyfriend's birthday, Isabella sent him a message. "Happy birthday, my love! I adore you!" Along with a lot of hearts and emojis. But the thing is, she sent that message from her bed, where she had just spent the night with a man she had met just a few hours earlier at a bar. I never told my boyfriend about this, not while I was on the trip, nor when I came back to Volgograd, not in the heat of an argument, nor in moments of sincere talks, Isabella admits. I feel like it would hurt him a lot if I told him, and I don't want to dig up the past anymore. At that moment, I was actually glad I cheated. I wanted to show him how much his possessiveness hurt me. I was tired of his constant emotional roller coasters, the game of getting closer and then pulling away. Back then, I broke free, and it made me feel better. Now I'm more confident in myself. I still love my boyfriend, but I don't let him control me. I realize that I matter, and I can walk away anytime I want. But every time I think about that day, I feel shaken. I try to avoid bringing up the topic of cheating in conversations. I guess I'm still kind of ashamed. Or maybe not.
In the summer of 1993, the air in Bellwood, North Carolina, hung heavy with heat and secrets. It was the kind of small town where everybody knew your name, where the local grocery store still used handwritten price tags, and where folks left their front doors unlocked because they trusted their neighbors. But under that postcard-perfect surface, quiet things festered. And for Sarah Whitmore, the quiet was deafening. Sarah had been married to Daniel for nearly 10 years. He was a mechanic, good with his hands, strong-backed and silent. The kind of man who believed hard work was the answer to everything, and who never asked questions when he came home to a clean house and dinner on the table. He loved his wife, in the way a man who works too much and speaks too little knows how. But Sarah needed more than stability. She needed to feel seen. The trouble began in late spring, when a man named Travis Reed rolled into Bellwood driving a dark blue 1987 Camaro with blacked-out windows and a radio that only played classic rock. He opened a used car lot just outside the city limits and spoke with the kind of charm that felt both dangerous and disarming. Nobody quite knew where he came from, but rumors quickly spread. Prison time in Florida, a fight club in Atlanta, maybe even mob connections out of New Jersey. No one asked too many questions, and Travis didn't offer answers. Sarah met him by chance. Her old Buick was stalling again, and Daniel was too swamped at the garage to get to it. She took it to Reed's lot, not expecting much. Travis flashed that slow smile and offered to take a look himself. She didn't know what caught her attention, first the confidence in his walk or the way he said her name like it was a secret. He fixed the car in under an hour and didn't charge her, said she could pay him back some other time. At first, Sarah convinced herself it was harmless. A conversation here, a coffee there. But Travis had a way of slipping into her thoughts when she wasn't looking. And as spring turned to summer, their meetings grew more frequent, more private. A room at the old Pinewood Motel became their haven, secluded, dusty, and far enough from downtown that no one would notice her car parked in back. The motel manager never asked questions. He just handed over the key to room 6 and looked the other way. Sarah began to change. She wore lipstick more often, played old vinyl records while cleaning the house, and stayed up late reading novels with folded corners. Daniel noticed the changes but didn't comment. He chalked it up to her just getting into a phase. He was wrong. What Sarah didn't know was that Daniel had secrets of his own. The garage had been struggling, and to keep it afloat, He'd started taking work under the tableno, questions asked repairs for men who didn't give names and paid in cash. One of them drove a black van with New York plates. Another had a scar across his jaw and a suitcase full of untraceable bills. Daniel didn't ask where the cars came from or what they were used for. He just fixed them, took the money, and went home. By August, things began to spiral. Travis had started hinting at a future leaving town, starting fresh somewhere out west. Sarah was torn between two lives. One filled with familiarity and guilt, the other with fire and danger. And then, one humid Tuesday evening, she came home to find Daniel sitting in the kitchen with a loaded revolver on the table. He didn't say anything, just looked at her, eyes sunken and red-rimmed. She froze in the doorway, purse slipping from her shoulder. The air between them crackled like static. She didn't know what he knew, but she knew he knew something. That night changed everything. Daniel didn't sleep. Sarah lay awake beside him, heart pounding. The next morning, he left early, didn't say where he was going. She called Travis in a panic, told him something felt wrong. He told her to pack a bag. He said they'd leave that night. Sarah hesitated, but when Daniel didn't come home by dark, she drove to the motel. Room 6 was empty. Travis wasn't there. No note, no message, nothing. She waited for hours. Midnight passed. Finally, she drove home, confused and shaken. The next day, police cars were parked outside the garage. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze. Daniel's business partner, a man named Roy, had been found shot inside the office. Daniel was missing. The investigation stretched over weeks. Sarah was questioned multiple times. She told them she had no idea where her husband had gone. She cried convincingly. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Hutchins, didn't believe her. But with no evidence, no witness, and no motive beyond money, there wasn't much they could do. Then, 2 weeks later, Daniel's car turned up abandoned in South Carolina, not far from the Georgia border. No sign of him, no blood, no fingerprints. Just an empty shell with a single bullet hole in the windshield. They ruled him missing, officially, but no one in Bellwood believed he was still alive. Sarah stayed in town, collected insurance, sold the house, took over the car lot after Travis disappeared for good. Some say she moved to Florida. Others say she still lives quietly in a rental on the edge of town. She never remarried, never spoke of Daniel again. The Pinewood Motel eventually shut down, and Room 6 was boarded up. Every now and then, on muggy summer nights, the people of Bellwood swear they hear the sound of a Camaro engine revving just outside the old lot, and sometimes, in the rearview mirror, a figure in a dusty denim jacket flickers for just a moment before vanishing down the road. Whatever really happened to Daniel Whitmore, no one can say for sure, but the town remembers. And Sarah, wherever she is still, feels the heat of that long summer, the weight of what she chose, and the man she left behind.